Okay, I'll introduce the board members and P&Z members that are here. My name is Rachel Bloomerth, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Jeffreys Point Neighborhood Association. Susan?
Hi, I'm Susan Huang. I am the vice chair. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Cole. I'm the secretary.
And let me see, I don't believe we have any of the P&Z members on the call. As a reminder, we do have a planning and zoning subcommittee. If it's something that you would be interested in joining, feel free to reach out to board@jeffreyspoint.org. Only one announcement tonight. The trustees are continuing to engage the public for their feedback on their plans for Piers Park Phase 3. There are a few links that I'm going to share in the chat if you are interested in getting involved and sharing your opinion. So I'm going to send that now. There we go. As a reminder, tonight we'll be hearing from two projects. We ask that all questions come through the chat unless you are in a butter that registered more than 24 hours in advance. To be in a butter, you have to live within 300 feet of the property. I will name everyone right now who is eligible to speak. It is the same list for both projects as we are doing 230 and 231 Everett Street. And if you would like to ask your questions and state your comments out loud, please raise your hand on Zoom at the end of the presentation, and I will call on you. If your questions are going through the chat, you can submit them at any time, so you do not need to wait until the end of the presentation. So the names of the abutters who are eligible to speak, and I will read these again after the first presentation: Brian Gannon, Garrett Riddle, Joshua Schmidt, Kim Carvalho, Marie Long, Devin Cody, Dylan O'Shea, Natalia Gutierrez, Mary Boyan, Kathy Schindeldecker, Kate Bergstrom, Abdi Jalil Krikib, Bree Maher, Eric Stivaleta, David Aiken, and Lisa Jacobson. All right, let's get started. We are going to start with 230 Everett Street, and I believe Richard Linz is here to present that. Susan will pull up the slides, and Richard, you can take it away.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you to the committee for, again, hosting the meeting. For the record, I'm Richard Linz. I represent the proposed project proponent, which is Karina Mejia. She's here with us as well. Our architect, Chris Perdome, with Zephyr Architects, is also on the call. This is our
it's a meeting. I'm just going to listen to it later.
Sorry. This is our second presentation, Planning and Zoning Subcommittee. We had made a previous presentation last month with our initial proposal. We did hear that there were a number of comments. I'm getting a lot of background noise. I'm sorry, Rachel. I don't know if other people can.
My apologize. Let me, okay, I think we should be good now.
I'm hearing, I don't know if I'm hearing music or.
I have everyone here is on mute.
Okay, better.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
So, as I said, we made the presentation previously. We did hear some feedback from the Planning and Zoning Subcommittee regarding some additional information that was requested. We've supplemented our presentation. I'll run through the deck now and then highlight the items that we were asked to update. So if we can jump to the next slide, please, I'll just go over the overview. So this involves the demolition of an existing single-family structure. There is no historical significance. With respect to this particular property, we always include that analysis anytime we're proposing demolition of an existing property. Our proposal involves the construction of a new 7-unit residential structure. We would include off-street parking for 7 spaces as well. These are all generously sized 2-bedroom, 2-bath units. These are all over 1,000+ square feet. And this is intended for home ownership upon completion. Next slide, please. Just a quick overview of the site. As you can see here, the location of the property located on Everett Street, Maverick Street being towards the top of your screen, and RD Street being located just before the site here, connecting both Everett and Maverick. Next slide, please. We could probably zip through these pretty quickly. If there's any specific questions on the overview of the area, we can come back to these. Next slide. Next slide. Existing condition. This is the street view of the existing structure. Again, as I mentioned, there is no historical significance with respect to the property. Although it may be old, it doesn't have any identifiable architectural characteristics or other significance that would preclude a relatively quick demolition of the property. Next slide. Just looking down Everett Street towards Jeffries. Next slide. And looking back up Everett Street, the building being on the right-hand side. Next slide. So our BPD abstract shows that this property is located in a 3F 2000 district. That's a zoning district that has been set forth the last time Boston or East Boston has gone through a zoning review. We do see some hash lines here on the properties located immediately to the rear. Those indicate the proximity of the flood zone. The majority or the predominantly most of our property is not located in the flood zone. There is a small area to the rear. We're not proposing construction of any structures in the flood zone. So our review under the flood hazard provisions of the Boston zoning code will be relatively limited. Next slide, please. This is just our abstract from the Macros database. Again, as I mentioned previously, we are demolishing the structure. We do not anticipate any extended review by the Boston Landmarks Commission in connection with this demolition, as there is no historical significance with respect to the site. Next slide. So this was the proposed elevation concept we showed at the last meeting. We were asked to show some different angles. I can ask at this time for Chris to jump in and to talk a little bit about the elevation, and then we could talk about the different views that we've added to the slide deck. So Chris, if you can jump in here and just talk a little bit about what we're looking at and some of the materials that we're using, et cetera.
Sure. So similar to what I had stated last time, we're trying to take some of the similar characteristics of the street with our kind of flat-faced facade matching the adjacent buildings. I believe they're 232 and 234 with our setback or lack of setback off with that front facade matching their consistent street face. We do create these recesses that we're showing with these wood tones to generate a little bit of warmth within the space. Generally where people are going to be interacting with the exterior, we try to create that sort of recess into the building, as well as a bit of warmth to provide some visual interest and give people an opportunity to interact with the outdoors. Those are balconies that we've created, so you have a visual connection to the street and your neighbors, as well as an opportunity for fresh air into the units. Other than that, our materials for the rest of the facade are a medium density fiber cement. The exact material and colors to be determined as we move through, but we're proposing here is a kind of soft gray tone, so we're not drawing any additional or adverse attention to ourselves, and a nice kind of contrast to those warmer wood tones that we're trying to use. We do provide a screening for the parking at the rear through the garage door on the right, which we will size accordingly for kind of maneuverability and access to those rear spaces. We have provided a couple of additional images that we will see on other slides to show you better within the context how this fits in. If I believe those are on the next slide, or there we go. So looking up the street, you can see how this kind of matches the kind of flush facade condition of our neighbors, trying to fit in appropriately and generally just not trying to stand out too much. We can come back to this later, but if you go to the next one, I believe we have a view from the other direction. Once again, kind of just showing our consistency with the street, both on our side and on the opposite side.
Thanks, Chris. And I just want to point out, these were a couple of the slides that were asked specifically by the P&Z subcommittee to include. So this was a specific request that was made after the last meeting. I'm going to jump to the next slide as well. So one of the other requests were to provide an example of the fencing that would be around the property. This is, and again, I want to be as completely transparent as possible. This is subject to BPDA design review because we do require zoning relief for the project. But this is the thinking for the type of fence that we would do. So the entire site would be encompassed by a cedar type fence. And this is a pretty typical example of the cedar type fence that this would be used for a project of this size. So this is what we're proposing for the type of finish.
Richard,
Sorry.
just to clarify, we were asking for renderings of the fencing on the roof.
Yep, I was actually just going to jump back to that. So
Okay.
The views that you saw in those previous images, because we have set back the roof decks and we're now utilizing the hatch as opposed to the head house. If we could go back one, you're actually not able to see those. So we can provide you with the railings that we're proposing to use, but from the street views, you won't actually be able to see them at all.
Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And Rachel, I will add, we did update the elevations as well, that we've removed the head house, but I apologize. I thought when your email had come over, it was about fencing in general. So
No,
I thought I about that. Okay.
Totally fine. This is helpful too.
Yep. Yeah, this will be the fence that will surround the property. So we want to obviously include that as well.
Thank
So
you.
we just obviously eliminated the head house. I think, as I mentioned in my previous comments with the last presentation, that the BPDA, the zoning board typically does not approve head houses. When we do our filings with the Inspectional Services Department, we always include a code compliant set of plans, which does require a head house at 4 stories. However, once we do present those to the neighborhood, we anticipate providing this as the final version of the plan. So I think that the elevations that we have actually show a better depiction of what the roof deck looks like. And I think that Chris was also going to provide us with an example of the panel system that's just essentially a see-through, clear, transparent system that doesn't necessarily have any balusters, but just in order to identify where the where the roof deck will be, we are laying it out on the elevation. So next slide, please. So our site plan showing the extent of our building, we do set our building back a little over 40 feet from the rear property line, which is sufficient under the Boston zoning code for a rear yard setback. You can see the layout of the parking spaces as they are arranged on the left property boundary as well as the rear. Next slide. This is our site plan, essentially showing the lower level unit. This would be the handicap accessible unit, which is at grade. There is no foundation being proposed on the site. This will all be slab on grade construction. So there's nothing below the ground floor level for the property. We do show one handicap space at space number 1. And then we show a total of 7 parking spaces, again, arranged on the left side of the property as well as the rear of the property. Next slide. Typical unit layout showing the units, the upper level units, the 6 units that would be on the 2nd through 4th floor. And then our roof deck layout as well, showing the extent of the setbacks of the roof deck. Next slide. Our elevations, and again, we were asked to show an elevation that eliminates the head house. So this will be the plan that will actually proceed before the zoning board, that we will not show any head house. We will be requesting building code relief for that, but typically in exchange for the Board of Appeals support for roof decks with no head house, building code relief is often granted. Next slide. Just a different view of the elevations again, showing the rear and the left of the building. Next slide. So by way of zoning relief, nothing has changed since the past presentation. We are proposing this as a multifamily, so we do require a variance. We also require relief on the side yard. We are showing a 1.5-foot setback. We will have inset windows to the extent that we have any openings on either side, as the requirement of the building code is 3 feet. We also are showing request a relief for floor to area ratio. We're at 1.91. The maximum is 1, and that is the amount of gross floor area that we're actually proposing in relationship to the amount of square footage that we have for our lot sizes. So because we have 4,500 square feet, we are proposing almost 2 times the amount of square footage of land that we have for our gross floor area, and therefore relief is necessary. We do comply, I would point out, with the rear yard setback of 40 feet. Our height is slightly above the height limit that is allowed in the district. 43 feet is the proposed height, which would be 8 feet higher than the 35 feet that's allowed. Our open space is about 170 square feet per unit. That includes the roof decks that are being proposed, as well as the balconies. Last but not least is parking. We do provide 1 parking space per unit. Under the calculations for Article 53, we would be required to have a total of 9 spaces as opposed to the 7. So we're requesting relief for the 2 spaces that were deficient. Next slide, please. So we started this process, just a quick overview of where we're at. We have a refusal letter and we submitted a petition to the Board of Appeal. We are in the community process. We will host our abutters meeting as well as ultimately go before, hopefully, this organization for a vote at one of its future full meetings. And then we anticipate being before the Board of Appeal sometime before the end of the spring of 2022. Assuming we get our approval, and there's never any guarantee that we do, we would go through a BPDA design review process and anticipate permit issuance sometime late spring, early summer of 2022. If construction were to begin based on the schedule that we anticipate, and again, this is very tentative and not necessarily the actual construction schedule, but the earliest you could expect something to happen here would be fall of 2022, and it would take about 12 months to complete. Next slide. I believe that's it, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know you have other presentations on.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to read again the list of abutters that can speak out loud. If you are on this list, please feel free to raise your hand and I will call on you. We have Brian Gannon, Garrett Riddle, Joshua Schmidt, Kim Carvalho, Marie Pepe Long, Devin Cody, Dylan O'Shea, Natalia Gutierrez, Mary Boyan, Kathy Schindeldecker, Kate Bergstrom, Abdel Jalil Krakib, Bree Maher, Eric Stivaleta, David Aiken, and Lisa Jacobson. So please feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to speak. All right, let's start. Brian Gannon, go for it.
Hello, everyone. Hi. So just looking at this, the proposal, I just think that it's too large for the neighborhood. And I think that, some of the design is based on, buildings that were built that were too large for the community in the first place. So I don't think it's looking at the surrounding structures as they've been there historically up until maybe a few years ago when some of those other buildings were built. I think additionally that looking at this in context of all the other developments in the neighborhood and on the street, there's a, is it 235? I think it's going to be presented tonight. 165 Everett, 254 was just built. If you look at all of these, we're looking at almost 40 cars if we have more than 1 car per unit, which is generally the way that these units are filled with, renters or, it's just looking at 40 cars. You're building just way too big in a floodplain, and I just think it's too much for the community to bear. So I really hope we can reject this and vote this down in our community meeting. Thanks.
Brian.
Rachel,
Eric,
do you want to
sorry.
respond? Wait till the end.
No, I'm actually not looking. I'd like no rebuttal from Richie, please. I mean, this is a community meeting. I'm just sharing my opinion with my neighbors. That's all I'm asking. So thank you.
I'm not asking you, I'm
I,
asking.
I, I really I don't want a response, please. Thank you.
I know you don't-
Okay,
No, thank you.
Richard,
Rachel,
you
love
can
you.
comment. Richard, we'll do comments at the end. Let's go to the next questions. Eric, did you want to speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name is Eric Stivaleta. I've been doing some research here for many people here on Everett Street. Got some experience in this area of conservation and landfill. Let me present this. Can anybody see this? This picture?
It appears your video is off.
No, your video's on.
My video is off. Let's see. I have this area here in the graded light gray shade. is all
Eric, your video's off.
All right, I'm having some difficulties here. And I don't know. Hold on,
Start video.
hold on, working on it now. Okay, okay, here we are. Can everybody see this map? This
Yeah.
area here was originally Noddle's Island. This is the landfill map. This graded area in here is all landfill here. And I've had some issues out in Medfield. Went to Norfolk Superior Court and lost because of a little bit of landfill. They're very environmentalist out there in the town of Norton and Hingham I had to work with. So we have that. So we can establish that this is all landfill. It's not safe. And there's a lot of issues in the area here. Place is sinking, cracked foundations, water's now going into the basements. That is a fact. I work with engineers and that's been a major concern. We spent $60,000 in the basement here. We have a dry basement and we do not want to continue to have any water at all. 60 grand. So that's one thing. It is landfill. I just got word that they changed the flood zones Monday from the city. This is a severe flood zone area. It's maybe 4 to 10 feet flood depths. And let me see if I have another picture here. Another map. If you can see this, everything is spotted like a cherry. It's all red. We're in a severe flood zone. It's going to continue to be a problem as we move forward. Okay, so that's also been established. Another area I want to get into. I'm trying to do this quickly because other people have time.
Yeah, Eric, just another minute or so.
Okay, this is the Helka screw design. It feels in 75 years. There's thousands of them laid here in East Boston. Some of them are already starting to fail. There's screws that go into the ground. So that's an engineering standpoint. The only way to do it is banging telephone piles in the ground. Also, these are all the laws in the state of Commonwealth of Massachusetts with regards to landfill. Therefore, there is a structure there. That structure can be taken down and be grandfathered in. You could probably get a 2-family there in any other town in the Commonwealth. So anything beyond that scope is not in reason with the laws of the Commonwealth. And that's pretty much all I have to say. So anybody else can take from there. So that's the laws with regards to landfill. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric. Richard, do you want to respond also to the changing of the flood zones?
Sure. Thanks, Rachel. And I appreciate being able, because there's a lot to unpack here. So first of all, I want to make sure we're clear on what the change was from the city of Boston. The flood zone is governed by FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. It's not, the city of Boston does not dictate where the flood zone is. What the city did has recently enacted what we call a resiliency overlay district. And that affects a lot of areas which are relatively close to flood zones. And any design that is done within a resiliency overlay district has to comply with the resiliency guidelines. It doesn't necessarily mean it's within a flood zone because the city says so. The FEMA maps were changed in March of 2016. And as I showed in that previous slide, that's from the BPDA abstract, we're not in the flood zone. We're actually outside the flood zone. And most of the property is actually clear of the flood zone. So regardless, we will go through a process with the Conservation Commission to ensure that we're complying with any of the regulations that are applicable. But the resiliency overlay is what I believe he's speaking about. As the conditions and concerns relative to the development within these areas. This is not the first, certainly not the last site that will be developed in this area. And one of the things that we're required to do, which doesn't exist presently, is to deal with stormwater management. That is a condition that doesn't currently exist with the existing two-family property. We would be required to put in a system that handles stormwater management on site. That is, again, not something that exists with most of the properties that are already existing in the neighborhood. So the conditions that are currently being experienced by the surrounding properties, including runoff, would be addressed much better by new construction on the site. Whether we build a two-family or a 7-unit, it doesn't really matter. We're going to be required to comply with those requirements either way. So I just want to make sure we're clear that the issues that were raised regarding flood zone don't change because the city of Boston has enacted some overlay. That can only be done by the federal government.
Okay, great. So we have a few questions in the chat. Oh, Kathy, go ahead. You can unmute Eric unmute so Kathy can talk. We can't hear you yet, Kathy.
Sorry,
Okay, there you go.
am I right? Okay, first of all, I'd like to say what Richard just said about the flooding zone and not to worry about that. Richard doesn't live in this area, and the properties that he did sell a few years ago, maybe last year, those tenants have had flood down in their cellars. Rapid flow has showed up many a times in that alley to help rectify the problem. Secondly, the building that is proposed is well over what the properties around here are, and also the roof decks. I don't see a need for a roof deck if you're going to be looking at all your neighbors' backyards and into their bedrooms and so forth. I just think it's an oversized unit. 2, 3 family, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna move to questions in the chat. Richard, we have a question about what about the height blocking the roof of 226 to 228 Everett, and that could disrupt the potential for solar panels.
So if I don't, 226, 228, is it to the left or to the right of our property? I'm not,
No.
I gotta look at a map. I think it's to the left.
I believe it's to the left, yes.
Yeah, so Chris, I think that we were asked about this as well. At 8 feet higher than the allowable height limit, I'm assuming the property to the left, if they wanted solar panels, the southern horizon is to the back of our building. So I don't know that we really block a substantial amount of light. I have to go back and look at it. This is the first I'm hearing of this concern.
Okay. David Aiken, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for arranging this meeting. It's been a long time since I've attended one of these, but back again. Certainly, don't mind the fact that it's not the greatest asset there. The house doesn't seem to be in the best condition, but I don't quite follow how 7 units were arrived at, how we've got a proposal in front of us that is basically a lot line to lot line across Everett Street. It looks like there's quite a bit of impervious surface being added in the back for parking, as we all talk about the flooding piece there and building, gray infrastructure underneath for stormwater management, but yet you've got many trees and grass back there to already help with stormwater. So I'm not quite sure I understand how the parking improves that. I have a couple of design comments, but they don't really feel that relevant to this point in time because it doesn't quite seem obvious to me, or sort of evident or explained. I realized there was an earlier meeting about where sort of under the zoning code, how we've landed at a proposal in front of us for 7 units that are not even family units. We're just talking 2-bedroom units, and we really are in need of family housing stock throughout the community. So perhaps, and I guess, it's always nice, maybe the proponent spoke at the first meeting, but I'm always a fan of hearing directly from the proponents about their experience building and why they've chosen to propose what they have. So I'm sorry if I missed some of that. Maybe there's an ability to rehash that very briefly. But I guess that's my primary question at this point in time is why are we adding so much impervious surface? And why are we seeing 7 units to replace a 1 or 2 unit house at this point in time?
David, thank you, and good to see you back on the.
Hi, Richie.
How are you? So I think the way we arrived at the 7 units, based on a number of factors, including other development in the area, and essentially what has been the trend for redevelopment of sites. I know the property at 159 to 165 Everett Street was relatively smaller size, and the other one at the corner of Artie and Maverick Street was probably comparable, but actually more units. We're sort of looking at what the trend has been in the area immediately surrounding the site to arrive at the number of units. Secondly, as for the impervious conditions that are being proposed, I think we actually raised this in a previous meeting, that we certainly will consider looking at alternatives to just blacktopping the parking area. We could look at sort of the impervious pavers, and as well as some other alternatives that don't necessarily require us to completely create an impervious surface. So that we have no issue with that, and happy to explore those options. As for what the developers' experiences, and we did cover that at the previous meeting. I did do an introduction at the first meeting that we presented this. I didn't know if we had time to do that, so I'm happy to send over her CV to you, David, if you want to take a look at that. She does have some extensive experience in some of the real estate development in and around the neighborhood, so I'm happy to do that.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Well, I guess I just concluded at this point in time and not yet, I'm not in support of this at this point in time. So, but thanks for the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna read a direct abutter. Kate Bergstrom put this in the chat because she's in a noisy area, but as an abutter, we feel 7 units is disproportionately large for the neighborhood and the street. Happy to see investment in the neighborhood, but 7 units and the parking issues that will result from those are unnecessary. Natalia, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I just want to share, I definitely agree with all my neighbors. We don't need a 7-unit building. It definitely doesn't go with the neighborhood. I've been here for a while now, and this is just by looking at it is excessive. 4 floors plus a rooftop, like Kathy says, like why are they looking at it? Everybody's neighbors, and there's not much to look at it. We're like downhill. Also, I have to say that by looking at the pictures that we just saw, we're cutting a lot of trees in that backyard. Like I'm very big and green, and there's probably, I don't know, it looks like more than 5 trees that you're getting rid of because it's a big backyard and it's like all the section full of trees, which I'm definitely opposed. And the other thing I support, there's no enough space for parking and for 7 units, which is probably going to be at least 14 cars because everybody has 2 cars per unit. It's just the reality. So I have to agree with all my neighbors that is definitely excessive. It should not be going in that place. Replacing 1 building, like 1 unit or 1 single family with 7. That's it. Thanks.
Devin, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say I also agree. I feel like it is definitely pretty big for the neighborhood. And I would just love to see something a little bit smaller. I understand that we are in a housing crisis. I also wonder if any of these will be affordable units or if they will be priced very high. Just something else to consider as well on top of, it is really big for the neighborhood. I'd love to see it maybe a floor lower, less units. Also concerned about storm rain runoff over here as well.
Thank you, Devin. Okay, I have a few more questions through the chat and then we are gonna have to move on. Another comment, no need for such a large building. How about just making it 3-family, 3 floors? Another neighbor said 3 floors maximum should be allowed. And that Artie and Maverick is an entire corner, 230 Everett is in no way anything like that. There is nothing on our block similar to 7 units. And that is all I have. So thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Rachel. And if there's anything further, please just email me and I'll try to respond accordingly.
Will do. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too. Moving on to 231 Everett. I believe Matt Eckel is here to present that. Am I right?
I am. Good evening, Rachel. Good evening, everyone.
Take it away.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Matt Eckel. I'm an attorney with Drago and Toscano here on behalf of 231 Everett Street, which just so happens to be right across the street from 230. With me tonight on behalf of the Crespo Group is Richard Crespo, as well as our project architect, Eric Zackerson. You can see on this cover sheet here, this front page, kind of in the middle is the proposed structure. You can see Eric Zackerson can comment a little better on all the materials, but he designed a building in a way to kind of break up the massing, kind of give a brick at street level feel to it, and then a different material on the 4th floor, which is also set back, again, just to kind of break up the building at the streetscape. So we can go to the next slide, please. And again, just the team, the owner of the property is the Crespo Group. I'm Matt Eckel from Drago and Toscano, and again, Eric Zackerson from Context, the project architect. The proposal, so what we're doing, and you can see a little bit of the picture in the cover page, is we're seeking to erect a new residential building with 4 units. These would be condominium home ownership units. The zoning subdistrict is a 3F 2000, and our lot size is 2,250 square feet. Next slide. So this is similar to what you saw in Richard's presentation, just the BPDA context map. So you can see our site highlighted there in orange. I apologize, it looks a little further away now than it did before. Currently the lot is vacant, but you can see the parameters there of the lot in the orange outline. Next slide. And again, we can kind of fly through these next few slides because you pretty much saw the same ones in Richard's presentation, just an aerial view pointing to the lot, a view down Everett Street. Next slide, please. View of the existing conditions, 231 Everett Street. So you can see there to the left, we have a 2-family at 233 Everett Street. And to the right, I believe those are 3 separate 3 condominium unit buildings. So 9 units total there, but obviously they're broken up by 3 different addresses. Next slide. So this is the zoning analysis. And as I mentioned, we are in a 3F district, a 3-family district. We are proposing 4 families, 4 units, 1 per floor. The minimum lot area is 2,000 square feet. As I mentioned, we have over 2,000 at 2250, so we do comply with that. Minimum lot width and frontage are required 20 feet each. We have 22 feet 6 inches, so those are also in compliance. Our FAR, we would be seeking a variance for. We're proposing 2.33, allowed is 1.0. Height, we're proposing 4 stories and 42 feet 6 inches, whereas 3 and 35 is required. Open space, you're required 300 square feet per dwelling unit. It does say 114 per dwelling unit there, and that is our on the ground open space. We are providing a number of decks, both in the form of rear decks, 1 front deck at the top level where there's that pullback, as well as 2 roof decks. So that number in actuality is much greater, but that's just calculating on the ground level, 114 square feet per dwelling unit. Front yard, we exceed the required 5 feet. We're at 5 feet 3 inches. We would need relief on the right side. We're proposing 1 foot, but on the left, we do exceed the 2.5 feet required. Rear yard, you're required 30. We would be at 20. And finally, parking, you're required to have 1.5 space per dwelling unit. Because the way the building would be constructed on this lot, we would not be offering any parking for this development. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed plot plan. So basically what you're looking at here is kind of down the middle of the screen where you can kind of see the 2 rectangles. Those are the roof decks. So that's the building as a whole. You can see there'd be a front bay involved in this proposal. And the building does extend a little bit further beyond the roof deck in the rear. So the idea with the roof decks here would really kind of put those in the middle of the roof. So they'd be pulled back from the street level and pulled back from the rear abutters to hopefully alleviate some of those privacy concerns we just heard about. These would be accessed through a hatch. Next slide, please. And there's the site plan, just a standalone plan with less lines and less properties to kind of outline. So you'd see that on the bottom there would be the walking path to the rear yard. You can get an idea of where the rear decks would be there, kind of in the top left, as well as the structure as a whole, how it would be placed on this lot. Next plan. Next slide, please. I'm not sure if the floor plans are as unimpressive to everyone else as to me, but they look to be blank. Okay, so I'm not sure what happened there, but just to walk through it. The first floor would contain unit 1, as well as obviously the main entry to the building. First floor would have 2 bedrooms, 2 bath, and that rear deck, which was highlighted in the last slide, kind of in the back right corner. The second floor would be very similar. It would contain unit 2, which would also be a 2 bedroom, 2 bath unit with a deck. These would both be over 1,000 square feet in size. I know there was a mention about family units in the last presentation. We are proposing 2 bedroom units, but at over 1,000 square feet, they could certainly accommodate a 3rd bedroom. So we could look at rearranging the floor plans if there was a request to maybe get an extra bedroom in a few of these units to make them more family friendly. They are oversized at 2 bedrooms, but that was just kind of our starting point for this process. Next slide, please. I have no idea what's going on. I know you have to share what was shown. I'd be happy to share my screen, which could actually show the plans, and it's the same presentation. I'm not really sure what's going on here.
Matt, if you want to email them to board@jeffreyspoint.org, we can pull them up.
Okay, are you okay taking a 2-minute break so I can do that?
Sure, go ahead. If anyone has questions thus far, please put them in the chat now.
And Rachel, that was board@jeffreyspoint.org. That's still the update?
Correct. And Susan will pull those up. She's monitoring the email right now.
I apologize again. If I had known they were not coming through, we would have resent them, obviously.
Thanks everyone for your patience. And just a reminder that during the question portion, it's going to be the same people are eligible to speak as the last project. So you will be able to raise your hand and speak for this project at the conclusion.
Okay, I just sent that through, so hopefully it'll just take another minute or two.
Great. And also, just so everyone knows, we will update in the minutes with the presentation. There will be a link to the presentation with the floor plans as well. Don't see it yet, Matt, but I'm sure it's a largish file, so.
Yeah, it might take a minute or two. It's a full PowerPoint.
Let's check one more time. You know what, can we skip the floor plans for now, wait for it to come through and do the rest of the presentation and then go back to it?
Sure, happy to do so. If you guys want to share the screen again, we can pick up and see what actually is coming through on the slideshow.
Okay. Yeah, Susan, if you want to pull up the other slides. And then once this comes in, I'll let you know.
Okay, so this one came through, so I guess we can pick up here. So these are those 2 roof decks, as I mentioned, that were proposed. They would be exclusive with separate access from within units 3 and 4. You can kind of see there, just starting at the bottom of the screen, that bay window. That's where there's actually a front setback from the 3rd floor to minimize the massing from the 4th floor. And then you can see it's further set back another 8 feet into that unit 3 roof deck. So all told, that's between anywhere from 13 to about 18 feet setback from the front of the building, because that bay does kind of jog in a little bit. So the idea being that that you wouldn't see the railings, you wouldn't see anyone up there, and they wouldn't really be seeing back at you. In the rear, we'd have the same 8-foot rear pullback, and then obviously the 20 feet of rear yard. So that roof deck would be almost 30 feet away from the property line and 8 feet pulled back and shielded from the building itself. Next slide, please.
We have the other ones came through. So Susan, if you want to pull those up, we can go back to the
Right.
floor plans. And Matt, just so you guys know, we do post the presentation that's sent to us that we are going to be projecting on our website on the meeting minutes. You can always check that to make sure that it's the file that you want to be presenting.
All right, thank you.
No
Final
problem.
I thought had full picture, so I'm not sure
Total- it
cyberspace,
happens.
but I appreciate
happens.
everyone's patience, and I certainly want to share all the materials we have.
I'm still not seeing the floor plans on the slides that you just sent.
I'm looking at them too. Yeah, Matt, they're blank on this one as well.
There's nothing.
So I know you require the presentation that's shared to be the one that's sent. Is there any way I can share my screen? Because I am looking at the floor plans right now.
Unfortunately, no, we can't do it because we have to stay consistent. What I would say is that for your next presentation, if you want a screenshot, I don't know if you want to take screenshots, or you can just include them in the presentation next time and we can go through the rest of the presentation. It's up to you, but we can't allow other people to share screens.
Okay, well, I guess we'll check back prior to the next meeting, because I'm looking at them right now, so I'm not
Okay.
really, I don't like doing a presentation and not being able to share it, but I understand technology has its issues. So I guess we'll go back and just finish what we have.
Oh, we're going back to what we had. Okay. No.
Thank you. Okay, so these are the front and left elevations. So actually on the right side is the front elevation. So you can get an idea again, obviously it's not in color, but some of the different materials, that bay that I spoke about, as well as that front deck, which is illustrated from more of a second or third story level view. So from the street, you wouldn't be seeing those railings up top for the roof deck. On the left side is the left elevation. So again, that just illustrates on the third to fourth story, that pullback I mentioned. And then the further pullback for the roof deck, you can see, is outlined by the railings. We would be flanked on either side by buildings, so you wouldn't see the railings from the side either. Next slide, please. Again, very similar here. We have the rear and right elevations. The right elevations look very similar to what you saw from the other side, with the pullback there being now on the top left. And then the rear elevations, you can see the rear decks proposed for units 1, 2, and 4. Next slide, please. And this is the building sectional, just to show the circulation. A little confusing without having the floor plans, but what you see there at kind of the bottom right is your main stairwell, which goes up. The reason there becomes a second stairwell is because units 3 and 4, which you would have seen on the floor plans, but you can at least get an idea here, are bi-level units. So over on the top right, you can see the third and fourth floor, both labeled unit 3. And on the top left, you'll see both floors are labeled unit 4. Both of these units are proposed to have 2 bedrooms on that third level, and then the fourth floor would provide the open living space, kitchen, living room, dining area for those units. Next slide, please. Again, this is the same rendering you saw in the beginning. Eric, I don't know if you want to jump in right now or wait for questions just to discuss materiality and the design a little bit further, or we can just.
Matt, before you go on, I think that we figured it out that it has to be opened as a PDF. So Susan, I believe Mary just sent the floor plans. Can you pull them up? We have the floor plans, Matt.
Okay, great,
So we can do those and then Eric can jump in.
perfect. Appreciate all your help.
I'm worried the plans are going to be anticlimactic after all this.
A lot of buildup.
It's a 1,000 square foot, 2-bed, 2-bath. They fit pretty comfortably.
All right, great. So here, now that you're actually seeing the floor plans, which were previously described, you can see at the bottom left, on the left side, that would be your main entrance, which leads you one to the accessible unit on the first floor, if you take that right and go through the door, or you can go up the stairs to the second, third, and fourth levels. This one, as I mentioned, would be 2-bed, 2-bath. You can see a large open living room, kitchen, space for dining table. And then you go down the hallway. These units would include built-in washer, dryers, utilities, HVAC within the units, and then the 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. Unit 2 looks very similar, albeit switched around a little bit. We still have the 2 bedrooms, still have the large kitchen, dining room, living room area, as well as washer, dryer, and HVAC and utilities within the unit. Also plenty of closet space. And you can see at the top right on both of the proposed rear decks, just to provide a little bit of open, usable space for each of these condominium units. Next slide, please. And here are those bi-level units I was speaking about. So you can see on the left side, it's unit 3 and unit 4. One unit, unit 3 would be kind of at the bottom of your screen. And that would contain the 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And then you go up through an interior set of stairs to the top level, the bottom right, which would be your open living, eating, dining room. Similar style in the rear for unit 4, 2 bedrooms on the 3rd floor, and then an interior stair connecting you to your living room, kitchen, dining room, also with rear decks there on the 3rd and 4th stories. These units would also have that interior set of stairs from the 4th floor to the proposed roof decks, which you did see in the prior plan set, which actually showed plans. So with that, Eric, I'd welcome you back in if you just want to speak quickly to design, if you have anything to add, and then we'll certainly open it up for questions and comments.
Sure. You want to?
You muted yourself, Eric.
Yeah, sorry, I have a 2-year-old next to me. So basically, if we look at the rendering, what we really want to do is try and provide something that's contextual with what we see on both our left and our right. And though the building on our right presents as siding on the face, it has kind of impressive brick wall on the side, and so we pulled that brick and wanted to make it the base of the building. We pushed our building back from the sidewalk much more than that building is. That building's right on the sidewalk, and so because we wanted a little articulation, we pushed it back 5 feet from the sidewalk so that the bay could come out but not interrupt people's kind of path of travel, and still actually leave just a little bit of a zone, a couple of feet zone, because that is going to be somebody's living room, and we want to have just an opportunity to have it be not right on the sidewalk. And then above that, we've got kind of the typical siding you see in our building on our left and our right. And then on the 4th floor, we wanted to put something a little bit dark. And so that could be a metal panel system like you would have on a roof, or it could be a mansard kind of shingle expression. It's left a little bit vague here because we don't really know what it should be yet. But we do have that 4th floor, and we pushed it back so that it would provide a 3-story cornice line, which is kind of more consistent with our neighbors, even though some of those are taller than our building and some of those are raised up a few floors from where we are. But we wanted to kind of preserve a 3-story volume on the front, even if we've got a little bit of a 4th floor setback on the top floor. But it does try and be kind of quiet on this street and fit in. Is part of the goal, is to aesthetically have the materials that we see around us. So, thank you. Any questions, comments?
Hey.
Rachel, I think that concludes our presentation, so we certainly open it up now. Thank you all.
Thank you. We're going to start. I do know that Eric and Kathy wanted to say something, so if you want to unmute Eric, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Eric Stivletter again. I manage the properties at 229, 227, and 225. We did some extensive excavation here between One Ipswich Place and the addresses I mentioned. Again, it's all landfill. The high water table has risen about 1 to 2 feet in the last 7 years. There is a stream that runs from underground stream that runs from Webster Street right down to the address of 230 Everett Street. There's also another stream that runs under 235. So when you start digging into it, the water's going to go everywhere. So that is a major problem. We do have a dry basement. We did some extensive work on the foundation. Any crack or water that gets into this building, I have to put everybody on notice because you are going to be responsible and you're going to pay for all damages. And the neighbors here also feel the same way. We can't be spending this kind of money then have it all undone because this project is too close to this foundation. It's a sensitive area.
And you have water pumping.
And I don't have any water in this basement, but there is some issues in the back. And that's what I want to make everybody aware of. First of all, it is a one lot. I don't know why the owner just don't sell the whole thing and at least do 8 feet away from the building as much as you possibly can. Doesn't seem to be that that's the way they want to go. So just to let them know, they will be responsible. Now, if the people, the new owners are going in there, they're going to be notified too, that they're going to be paid for any damages from here for eternity. So just to let everybody know. And I'm done with that. And I'm finished.
Matt, Echo, quick question. Has a butter meeting been done with the city yet or no?
It has not. We want to schedule as soon as possible. I'm sure you're aware the East Coast coordinator has changed and she was going through training. So we put off coming to you for a month or two because we were thinking we might be able to get that in first, but as that got delayed, we wanted to at least start the process. So we expect to have one within the next month, which will obviously be flyered in accordance with the city requirements.
Great. Kathy, go ahead. Sorry, you can unmute.
Okay, go, Kathy.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm very sorry about this. But first of all, I'd like to say, Matt, we were never got any flyers as abutters as to when this meeting was going to take place tonight. That's number one. Number two, if you have decks in the back of this building, why would you need roof decks? And also from what I can see on the, if you're looking straight from Everett Street back to the left on your building, you have all these beautiful windows. What about all the neighbors that are next to them that the tenants or the homeowner are going to be able to look out and we're going to be able to look into those beautiful windows?
And it have to be 4
There's
feet
no
away from this
privacy.
building.
There's no privacy at all. And I don't understand. There's a lot of water back in the back of that building where you want to build 4 units. There's a lot of flooding. The lot next to it also has flooding. They have a sump pump in their cellar. So, I mean, this is a real problem in this neighborhood. And like Eric said, if we're going to start having flooding problems, when you start to dig and everything, we are going to be knocking on your door. You can guarantee that. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. And just to respond briefly to both comments, we understand, obviously, it was mentioned across the street with the water issues. We are not proposing a basement as part of this property, so
We have a basement.
But we have basements. We have
I
basements.
know, I
and that's
understand,
not
but-
fair,
It has a
Matt,
dry.
okay?
It has a dry.
And the
Can I
other
respond,
thing is
please?
also the,
Yeah.
we weren't notified.
Okay,
That's all.
I
We
understand.
weren't
I'm-
notified.
Okay,
understand.
let
It
Matt
shouldn't be
respond.
counted as a meeting.
Kathy, we need to let Matt respond. Go ahead, Matt.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I understand that you have a basement and there's concern, and that is perfectly valid. What I'm trying to say is we are not putting in a basement, which means our level of excavation, we're not going down as far as you'd have to excavate if we were doing a full basement. So by us not digging down as far, that
You
limits
have to build up foundation.
exposure to you or other abutters. As Richard Lenz also mentioned, we would be going through a full process with the City of Boston Water and Sewer Commission to install management systems for rainwater, for runoff. Often projects like this do improve the conditions because right now there's nothing. There is some green space in the rear of the property, but otherwise it's paved over. So there's every opportunity to actually improve this condition. I apologize for the flyer. I can't speak to exactly why you didn't get one. You know, we do have another meeting coming up, you know, in the near future for an abutters meeting, which you'll get flyered for, and we will be coming back at least one more time, if not multiple times, to the Jeffreys Point Neighborhood Association.
Okay, thank you. Eric, we do need to move on to other neighbors. I will come back to you, okay? Brian Gannon, go ahead.
Yeah, hello. So, you know, it's nice to at least hear from somebody else in our neighborhood that's building these giant buildings. But I think the concern I have is, can you go back to that variance? What are the variances that you're asking for again? That list, I think.
Yep. So we're looking for a use variance where 1 unit over allowed is 3 families. FAR, floor area ratio, height, we're at 4 stories and 42 feet 6 inches.
But it's 5 with the roof deck though, right? I mean, it's almost, I mean, height wise, it's almost 5.
No, a roof deck might have a 3-foot fence. That does not count as a story. So no, that's incorrect. It's 4 stories. And where a lot of the structures along this street are 3 stories with a raised foundation, as I mentioned, we're coming in right at grade for an accessible unit. So yes, we are 4 stories, but a number of the buildings around are between 3 and 3.5 stories. And no, the roof deck doesn't count as a 5th story. As you can see in the chart here, we're also looking for a setback variance on the right side. We're proposing 1, hearing from the director butters on the right side. We could certainly look at the location of this building, maybe center it a little more, or perhaps swap the orientation to provide them a little bit more relief. So that's something we can certainly take back. And then rear yard, we're short by 10 feet. And parking, we are not proposing parking. So we'd need a parking variance as well.
Yeah, I think I think it's just too big. It's going all the way to the end of the lot straight through. But then the other piece is with that parking variance, I mean, there's currently the units next to you were previously using that to access their parking. So, I mean, really, essentially, you're removing the parking there and then also not adding any more parking with these additional units, which is just, again, I think in context of all the developments that have happened on the street, you know, and I think, you know, Richie had alluded to the additional, you know, the other units that set precedent. Well, he was the lawyer for most of those other buildings as well. But I think all those developments are just so large. So in the last 5 years, we've seen this huge increase, which, as I mentioned, I'm looking at probably 40 cars. I didn't even account for the ones that are in those units that'll be eliminated. So we're looking for, there'll probably be likely about another 42 cars on the street in context, just between Lamson and Jeffrey Street with these developments that are going in. So I think those variances are there. I mean, the zoning's there for a reason. We really hope that you could follow it and, you know, actually either add parking, stay within the 3 stories and, you know, keep the setback in the back to maintain the character of our neighborhood. Because we live here and we're going to live here for a while. And I think that, you know, some of these things get sold off and rented pretty quickly, and it causes a lot of traffic on our road. So.
All right, Brian, I appreciate all the feedback. A lot of that is valid. We'll certainly take a look at those issues. You know, pretty much every site around here, for better or worse, would need zoning relief because the lots are fairly tight, as you know. But those buildings are already there. We're proposing a new building, so we'll certainly take a look at your feedback. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh, you may unmute.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, so I've been listening in a lot, and I completely understand the landfill issue. Because I mean, this just kind of goes with what Massport's been doing with that, with the landfill. So yeah, I feel like you should either do one or the other. You should be causing more environmental issues, or you should be lessening the parking issue. And Massport's been doing a great job with the phase 3 of not dealing with the parking, but definitely helping with the environmental issue. I feel like this hits both of them hard. It's going to impact the Civilettas and anybody who is immediately there. And yeah, I mean, the parking, because of all of the development on Webster, is just unattainable for everybody. And Everett's going to turn that way with more of these developments. So that double whammy, I'm not sure if there's a way that you feel maybe the design is good for the space, but are we thinking about any of those two issues, or is there a way to alleviate one of those two issues?
Thanks, Josh. Eric, did you want to say one more thing quickly before we go to the chat?
For a minute. Yes, hi. You just mentioned this well runoff water. I failed to mention that earlier. We did build one back here in 2007. It's in the rear of the building, and it does require maintenance. We've noticed over the last couple of years that when you do a perk test, you time it to see how fast the water dissipates into the ground. It's been slowing considerably. It's not going down as fast as it was. This year, we have to pull all the stone out and we have to redo this again and see what the story is and do another perk test and time it. So because of the high water tables increasing to the surface more, it takes longer for the water to evaporate into the ground. So to let you know, there is issues with that. And you may have to tie that into the city drainage, which is, I don't know if they'll allow you to do that, but you would have to increase the diameter of the pipes in the ground itself to handle such kind of water. It's also been a major problem throughout the neighborhood. Everybody's running sub pumps or the water's floating on the sidewalks. As you know, they've been very icy on the sidewalks because of water coming off the roofs. So anybody's taking knowledge, looking around, but yeah, we do have a dry well, and to let you know, and it's slowing up, and we got a maintenance set this year, and I do have an engineer coming to the building. He's going to do his routine inspection that we normally have him do. But he's been pretty busy in East Boston because there's been so many problems with water and structural problems, cracked foundations, brand new buildings right here on Ardy Street. Building's 30 years old, same issue. When my neighbors called me, the repairs were done and they sold and left. That's 3 people within 4 years. So they know what's going on. So they left. One went to Marion, the other one went to Winthrop, and who went elsewhere. So I'm all set for that. We can discuss that later. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to the chat now. One resident says, I like this building design much more than 230 Everett. Please confirm that there is no loss of trees. Do you know if there will be trees lost from this?
I'm not sure exactly where the tree line, Eric might know better than I do, I apologize, but where the tree line starts at the back, we would be keeping a 20-foot rear setback. I think we'd probably be losing maybe a few. Eric, I'm not sure if you're a little bit more familiar with where the is.
I'll double check this. I thought the trees were not on our property, but I'd have to double check.
Okay. And then another comment that 230 Everett, similar to what they said for 230 Everett, that there are no family units being proposed here. So, and another comment that from a resident, we have seen more flooding as well in our backyard, in the back rear of our house. 228 has seen a crack and they abut 230. And that is all for now, I believe. Any other questions, please put them through the chat now. Okay, that is it. We thank you for presenting. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Just as a reminder, the next monthly meeting will be on March 14th. We hope to see you there. For the presenters, Richard and Matt, we will be emailing you with next steps, letting you know if it will be coming back to another P&Z or moving forward to a vote. And thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Apologies for the technical difficulties.